The stigma around mental health and treatment continue to exist, and though this has started to change, people still hesitate to seek help or even talk about this with their loved one for the fear of being judged and facing unnecessary backlash. Now, in commemoration of Mental Health Awareness Month, I do have joining me today on radio on Help Plus to discuss mental health awareness in Nigeria, Kolade Stephen. Now, he's a certified life coach, he's a behavioral expert, he's a management consultant, he's a therapist, and well, I'll say you're my friend just for the sake of this conversation. Kolade Stephen, it's so nice to see you once again. Good morning to you.
Great to be here. Great to be here.
I mean, I was serious about being a changed person. I've been able to go 5 minutes without trying to bully you on air or anything like that. Acknowledge my efforts, Kolade Stephen.
Nigeria, help.
It's so nice to have you here. Thank you for indulging us. So, of course, like I said before in my introduction, every May awareness is brought to mental health in the country, and it's so unfortunate that we have such high statistics of individuals that suffer from one mental health condition or the other. Unfortunately, it's even underreported how in Nigeria we have a very high disregard for mental health issues, and also going ahead to describe for what mental health in itself even means.
Want just to put a definition to mental health. Mental health would be defined as a state of total well-being, because the human totality of the human is made up of his mind, his body, and his soul. So to be mentally whole or to be mentally fit means that in every sphere of your mind, of your psychology, there is a balance, so that everything is in its place, without any form of disconnect or disregard, as it were. So when you get to that stage where everything is fine, and beyond everything being fine, you have a level of control, then we say that you are in a state of good mental wellness.
All right, I still want you to talk about the kind of disregard, because in this part of the world, Africa, and more specifically in Nigeria, when they hear mental issues, the picture that is painted in their mind is a man who is on tattered clothes and pushing tires around the street. And sadly, that's not what it means, but that's just the general notion we have. Once we hear mental illness, we just see somebody who's roaming the streets, with untidy hair. But talk about that, that misconception, why that notion has, been promulgated for so long, and why we still continue to see mental health issue as an Oyinbo thing, so to speak.
That's interesting, because there's something I was thinking of saying on air. In fact, when I woke up this morning, the thought came to me, and I was fighting myself not to say it. But the truth is that some of the biggest misconceptions about mental health in Nigeria are factored on culture, and the second I would say are factored on religion. And then if there's a third, I would say it is lack of acceptance. Culture, because we're in a society where everybody believes that for you to have a mental issue, it means that I ain't share.
Yeah, short you are.
From the village. The village people have come follow you all the way from Lagos, right, and finish you. So there is that thing. So there is that connotation that when you are depressed, depression is not something that boo can cure. Depression is not what the people can deal with. So you really have to. It's something that can happen to anyone. Many things that can lead to it, and then because of course life has become a bit more mobile, things also have changed. Then the second problem that leads to the misconception is that our faith, and I'm being a Christian, I'm careful not to say that Jesus is the biggest problem of mental health.
Yeah, I can understand. Religion dogma, let's put it like that.
Okay, religious dogma.
Yeah.
But and then we are familiar about when they say something goes wrong with somebody, and the next thing for some religious sect is that they take you in bound in chain. I've seen one. I saw one in Ilorin, and I was a bit pretty ruffled. And after sitting down to talk to the person out of curiosity, I noticed that the person needed therapy. Yes, the therapy might cost a bit of money, but I know there are interventions that are available that are cost-friendly, that can help.
Right.
Then, of course, you want to speak to the concept, of course, of lack of acceptance, which is that we are in a society where people fail to admit and accept that it is good for you not to be all right. It's normal for you not to be all right. But there is a challenge when you don't accept it. Then that's when people now become, which of course jumping it, that people are high performing damaged people. Say there's an high performing depressed person, there's an high performing addict. So it faces out everything. And if you look at relationship, and all you need to know how ideally bad it is being in the street of Lagos. Take a bus, be in a bus ride from one location to the other, and you will see all sorts of personality and behavior jump out, and you see people respond, and you ask, Oga, could you turn here now? You don't you don't bring a sword to a kitchen knife fight.
Right.
You don't do that. So those are some of the, so that I would say those are the three key issues that bothers on how our mental health and that misconception has been fostered and it's been forged, and it's become a problem,
right,
for us as a people.
We will still address all of this, because there's actually a part of this conversation where we would open up, misconceptions and myths about mental health in Nigeria. Let's just still stay on so that it can progress in a meaningful way. Now, there's a wide range of conditions that can affect how you think, how you behave, how you even respond things with the bus driver analogy that you just gave. So that means that mental health, obviously there are different types, because these manifestations are different. It's not a one size fits all. No. You're not crazy per se. So because like you said, you can have a mental health issue and you're still functioning great, you're still doing well at work, but people do not know that you're struggling with something. So let's talk about the different mental health conditions there is, and if you can maybe also shed light on how these mental health manifest in different people, maybe even in different personalities.
So rather than say we should talk about the different stages and different conditions, I think I would like to also focus a bit more on, which is one thing I like to do. It's about the person, the people, how.
Right.
The possibility and your bringing, of course, will determine, and I always talk about this, the concept of nature versus nurture.
Right.
You can't deny that. What were you naked into as a person in birth? What are those immediate exigencies or instances or happenstance in your life that nurtured you? And I will give classic example. A child that grew up with a non-absentee father, well, most of the time psychologically, because the mother doesn't know how to even start the conversation, leave and begin to blame herself. That child, that sort of female or male, will live life projecting. A boy that sees his father beat his mom has created or has locked a certain stereotype at the back of their mind. If those issues are discussed or talked about, they begin to respond a certain way. So number one, like I said, is everybody should be honest and have a conversation about their family history.
Right.
That's the one big elephant in the room that we do not like to talk about. Who are the people in your family? What is the family? And know this history and find it out. Don't just say because don't let the only thing you trace in your family is that you have a beji. No. There are a lot more serious things in your life. Are there people with mental health? And then watch immediate patterns of people in your life, your father, your mother, your sister, and then you will see where the trace is. When you identify that first as an individual, then it becomes easy for you to now begin to say, okay, do I work well under high pressure? Do I shut down under high pressure? What are the triggers that I have consistently found out that will either push me, or like we say, that will push the fight or flight response for me when I come against things? And I'm saying that because there's a generational thing. Of course, we talk about the Gen Z, the baby boomers, the Gen X, and the likes. These generations respond also differently. One of the biggest challenges we still have in the workplace, which is an ongoing conversation, is the Gen Zs that a lot of my generation don't know how to deal with.
Yes.
And even as a management consultant, I have to pinch myself and remind myself,
you're dealing with a different set of people.
Yeah, because these are the guys who want they want the big job, they want the pay, but beyond the money, they want comfort. So they are willing to take a job that pays them 150,000 naira, but that they can work from home, say 4 times a week, and show up at the workplace twice. While my generation would rather take a job that will pay them 300,000 naira, which is double that money, and drive 3rd Mainland Bridge back and forth to the mainland, and they get home stressed and shattered and all of that. That's because as a generational shift, and this thing is also going to keep on getting larger and larger. And then don't forget that the Gen Z generation When you do anything, they take you up. Say, man, you're affecting my mental health. You're affecting my mental health. They are quick to identify a workplace that is toxic, that things are not. They will tell you. But my generation will believe
it's part of the sacrifices.
You take it in. You will grow. You grow a muscle.
Let me interject a little bit there. Do you think that maybe that's why we have more, people who have certain mental illnesses? Like you said, there is that generational shift. Nowadays, we see people who would, call others out when they're starting to affect them, affect their efficiency, compared to, the millennials who are willing to take it as part of the training process to be better. Do you think that maybe this generation are using the mental health conversation as an excuse to take accountability? And do you think that maybe the decision of the millennials, for example, to endure whatever toxicity is in the environment, I will thrive no matter what, do you think that's why we have a high percentage of older people who are somewhat damaged, in a manner of speaking, who have mental illnesses that they cannot even identify?
Sage has done it again.
I lied when I said I changed. I did not.
So this is it, yeah. For the millennials who I happen to be in their gap, the big challenge is that we are the ones who are bigger in denial. And somebody who does a lot of coaching and therapy, I will tell you that the bulk of the people I see are 85%. What am I talking about? 90% women. And then the age bracket in my own generation will probably be in the 30 percentile. Now, I'm saying that to say that because of the generational gap, like you said, the disconnect is this. For the Gen Zs, the problem is this: we are building a generation of people who are becoming less and less resilient. Resilience is needed for growth, and one of the things that comes with resilience is pressure, the stretch, the discomfort.
Yeah.
But my own generation is over resilient.
Yeah, we can take anything.
We can take things that are none of our business, and we are so bad at it that we even excuse bad behavior away. And we excuse bad behavior away that it's become a pattern of life that we've owned. And so the challenge is that the millennials who are having kids now, who are Gen Zs, most times are living in a home where there is a consistent tug of war, because you are telling your child that every morning you must wake up by 6:30 a.m. to pray. And the kids are telling you,
the doctor has 8 hours sleep.
That's get my argument.
Wake up at 6:30.
But after can I be waking? My body needs the sleep. And then the other challenge is that my own generation, we were the ones that were born with the phones. Sorry, we're the ones that saw the phone evolve.
Yeah.
But the millennials are the ones who use the phones. So they have access to information that we don't have. And like you said, if you use that example of sleep, they justify and tell you why 8 hours sleep will guarantee you to live longer, give you health, make you better. But my generation believes that you must, in the morning, early in the morning, that it is early in the morning that God has a way of hearing you. It's like when you call God after 6 a.m. He's busy attending to Croatia and the Russia war and all of that, and he doesn't have time. But so it's a perspective thing. So I would say this: for the millennials, I think it's a challenge. It's a challenge most times because if most people are not careful, it allows you to escape the reality of growth. And then escape the fact that life does get uncomfortable. So how do you learn to be better if you don't face the discomfort? For the Gen Zs, for the millennials, the challenge now becomes that when do you get to a place where you become malleable and learn to grow? And which is one of the biggest challenges. We get to a stage where lots of us get to stop growing, and then we are fixated and we begin to own our problems. Then rather than deal with it, we rather go and fast and pray and bind evil spirits and bind people who are literally not even in your business, rather than know that what you need to do is fix it. A standard issue was, so recently I had an issue, which is that I found out my sleep duration was getting shorter. So I was speaking to a doctor and I was like, oh, how do you sleep? And I said, I sleep face down. He said, no, that's not healthy. And I noticed I've been wearing a lot of collar and all of that. And I said, no, you have to learn to sleep on your side or sleep on your back. Bloody hell, why that's hard. Today made it day, I won't mention the day, but I've been enduring the pain of learning to teach myself as an adult to sleep properly,
right? Because
I want to get an hour of sleep. So I'm using it as an example that the people who are the millennials will need to learn actively and own it. And I will tell you also examples that most of the time I've been in sessions and I'll probably do a joint therapy group. You need to see how adults will just break down and start crying. The millennials are the ones who struggle. When I do those sessions, interventions, the Gen Zs, they let it loose. They just, tear up and they're like, oh, this one. But yeah, in a way, it gives me business. Tough luck.
Please hold. Hold on a second, please. Just for the sake of people who are probably just joining us and they're trying to understand what's going on in the studio, this is Help Plus on Milan 98.3 FM, and don't worry, nothing is different. We're just talking about a conversation that it's not as should I say medical as you would like it to be. Before we talk about signs and symptoms, surgical process, and what have you. But I can assure you that mental health is as significant as whatever a medical condition we've been addressing over time. This is Help Plus on Mainland 98.3 FM. We're talking about mental health awareness. This is because every annually in the month of May, there's mental health awareness. There's programs to educate people about certain mental conditions and how to best deal with these conditions. I do have Kolade Stephen with me here in the studio. He's a certified life coach. He's a behavioral expert, a management consultant, and is also a therapist. Together we've been talking about mental health condition, what it means, the disregard for mental health in Nigeria, the wide range of conditions that most likely triggers mental health issues, even the generational gap or the shift between the Gen Zs, the millennials, and how it's like we the older generation for some reason do not think that mental health is a thing to bother with. They believe that discomfort is a badge of honor that you must wear, compared to the new generation that we have now. Anything that would discomfort them or affect their mental health, they're saying a big no to it regardless. So you can definitely contribute. We're streaming live on Facebook and YouTube, Mainland 98.3 FM, and you can also call into the studio if you have questions or contributions. 0913 6000 410. The WhatsApp number is 0913 6000 430. So there are a number of medical mental health conditions. There's anxiety, there's clinical depression, given some eating disorders, anorexia nervosa, for example, but we're trying to address some of the triggers, of which you've mentioned even family history, as you might want to deny it, but it can be the reason why you're such an aggressive person. Because you saw your father beat your mom, like the analogy you gave, you have a stereotype at the back of your mind, you're always on guard. Even the difficulty you experience in socializing might be as a result of the family you came out from, and that is a mental health condition that we have to take care of. So you already started talking about the gap. We spoke about the generational gap. Let's talk about the gender gap now. We know that there's some sort of socially constructed responsibility that is given to men and women. There's this high expectation of men, there's high expectation of women. It might be in different areas. Maybe for men it's financial, for women it's the ability to raise a kind of family, to be you're supposed to be the most morally upright person in the room, etc., etc. So let's talk about the disparities between mental health illnesses or mental illnesses, I beg your pardon, and how they affect men and women. Is it different? Is it the same? What role does society play in mental health issues and how it affects men and women alike?
You want us to just be throwing stones? Anyway, I before I answer that, I think it's also noteworthy to mention that if I know you talk about health and health related thing, and I can tell you for free that the bulk of every sickness, let's put that out there, is first in your mind before it's in your body.
Right.
So the best way to get to heal yourself faster, which of course we know is psychosomatic, like they would say, is that your mind needs to be right for your body to get well.
Right.
Then the disparity between the challenges between men and women. That conversation.
There's plenty talk in the book of Togo. All right.
So, number one, we're in an environment that, and I think it's also now changing, because we'll say it's in the Western world, but it's also happening here. That's the challenge about every man, the conversation that men don't cry,
yeah,
and that a man has to be tough.
I mean, there's this phrase "man up." It's really called "man up."
But how will a man up when his life is consistently always down? That's such a contradiction, because the big challenge now is that we are in a generation when, and I will speak also to the millennials, where, because they grew up from the baby boomers who were there was a lot of misogyny and patriarchy, which means that the father was the head, he provided everything and all of that. But on or before the millennials came, we now had a shift in employment where we found out that women were now
taking the workplace
competing
and
at the workplace. So women were doing more. Then it now became the challenge that men who were having jobs and now some of them found themselves at home couldn't reconcile what they were supposed to do.
And then insecurity sets in.
Yes.
And then aggression.
Yes. So the men now literally had what I call an identity crisis, and they could not reconcile it. So rather than now find a new identity for themselves, they began to beat women, began to bash women. They became the beer parlor gang that would talk and tell you that nothing good can come out of a woman just because.
Right.
So there is this conversation I was into yesterday that made me laugh, which is that women naturally have it easy. And then the ladies were actually bashing each other. They said, no, because you're a woman, naturally, just because you show up as a woman and you look a certain way, certain things are naturally
in your favor.
Actually expected to happen, and you don't really have to work for it. And why in that conversation, the guy was saying, but it could make sense now. Why would I work hard or 50k, take you out on a date, spend 22,000, and after that 22,000 me from 180, you will just ghost me, and I'm going to have to go back to work another month to work up to make up for that money because I have consistent bills. So between men and between women, yes, there is that disparity. And then before we would have said, oh, it was gender preference more to the females than to the male. But these days, I think it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Well, I would say it tilts more because women they're more expressive and open, and they talk about some realities. And I think one of the conversations that caught my attention this week was M.I. Abaga's wife talking about how she was functioning because he had ADHD in their marriage. So the reality is that there are realities, which is also another mental condition,
right,
that people don't want to talk about. Because if you have an ADHD child, the way they learn is different from the way the average child would learn.
Right.
So are our schools designed? Are they created in a way that they can identify and say, okay, this is how I teach these children. This is how. So you find out that you have children in school, and you find out that a certain child is not doing well, not because they can't do well, but because that child has a learning style. So that means that there's a learning deficiency that the school or the parent don't know how to handle.
Let me ask you something. I know you already spoke about it briefly, but in society today, who would you say is more vulnerable or more susceptible to mental illnesses? I'm not even talking like depression, for example, because depression is actually the most common form of mental illness, not just in Africa. Generally, it's depression. And most times when especially when you tell your parents, I think I'm depressed, and you're not depressed, you're just hungry, come and eat, you'll be fine. Are you paying bills? That kind of thing. And then you're like, yeah, it's fine. And then we'll still talk about the statistics of suicide that we have. But to the question, who would you say is more depressed? And I'm still talking about the gender gap and severity to which these mental illnesses affect the genders. Would you say that women nowadays are more depressed because of societal expectations of them, expectations of marriage, childbearing, of they're supposed to be morally upstanding? Or would you say men are more depressed in modern day society because of the financial expectations of them and the need for them to man up regardless of how terrible their life is going? And I want you to address this on the backdrop of the reality of our country at this very moment.
Why are you doing this to me?
That's why we are here. This is why we are here.
Okay, if I will share experiences from my practice table, I will tell you that more women show up to talk about depression. Then if I tell you off the cuff of my hand, I have more conversations with men who give me constant vibes about dealing with depression. But they will not pay to have a session with me. They will not pay. The women would rather pay because they want me to deal and help fix the issue. So in the light of that, I'll be careful to say it's either the male or I think there is a balance. And like you said, so another issue that people don't also like to address, that is like one of the biggest trigger for depression, is fear. We don't admit fear is a problem. And so the fear of the things you don't deal with, because you give it life, it keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, which is one of the things we say when you're dealing with mental health issue, whatever it is you're dealing with, bring it to the light. Anything that is in the light suddenly loses its power. It loses the weight of its of the power that it has. So in that context, I would say I'll give it to women. Yeah,
Just give it and let it go.
is it like a vote, or is it supposed to be like a wrong vote at this point?
And I know why I'm saying this, because I've seen a lot of conversations, even on social media. You'll be shocked as to the thought process of a lot of people and their expectation of women, and how most people will excuse bad behavior with "I'm the man here." And though I'm not going to be biased, or I'm not going to delegitimize the feelings of men, I see that men are forced to suppress majority of their emotions, and
more men are talking now. Lots of men actually.
That is why you would see a lot of aggression from men. That is the only way they found as an outlet for what they're feeling. So they would rather be aggressive or violent than have a conversation with "I'm sad."
Yeah.
Some men would rather chew charcoal than admit that they're sad, and so they will just find a way to let it out. Let me go and do some sort of let me lift weight. They're not even lifting because they want to be healthy. They're lifting because they need something that can exert them, that can force them
because
to let go of what they're feeling.
Because 90 pieces of iron doesn't lie.
Okay, so I mean, speaking of suicide, Nigeria is ranked 15 on the list of countries where suicide happen a lot. So in fact, we're I think number 5, or we were number 2, or I think some 2 years ago, of the most depressed country in the world. I think this was 2-3 years ago. 2 years ago, the most depressed country in the world, number 15, and the number of suicides that happen. Is this a country specific thing? Why are we on that list? Why is it because of the state of our economy? Is it because of society's expectations of us? Why exactly are we on a list that makes us the most depressed country in the world, and 15 with the amount of suicide? I mean, I'm pretty sure you saw the news with people jumping off the bridge, committing suicide, ingesting insecticide and what have you. They would rather die than have conversations with people. Why? First, do you think this is because, again, I'm going back to the disregard for mental health, where they believe that nothing is wrong with you, you are just hungry? Or do you think it's because they don't feel like they're in a space where their feelings would be acknowledged? Why do you think that people are choosing suicide rather than have conversations about their mental health issues?
Have you driven on this road recently?
Okay, yes, traffic. So you mean traffic that makes someone want to go? I'm serious.
Yeah, but I'm being serious.
I know the road rage is there and everything.
So I'll tell you what people believe. Before we made the tall number on the highest number of depressed people. Don't forget, for a long time we were called what? The happiest people on earth.
I mean, that list, I questioned that list when
I
saw it. I checked it. I don't know how they came about that.
No, but that's the truth. Nigerians everywhere in the world are unnecessarily happy people.
Or we're pretending to be happy.
I was going to say that we found a coping mechanism that, rather than deal with our issues,
make jokes about
we suppress it with jokes, and we try to be funny. And so let's play out this funny scenario. How many people in the world who are the funniest people that
they're black people?
They die of depression. They have addiction issues. So that's why some people will say that the office clown or the class clown is one person you should also naturally always pay attention to,
right? Because
humor, joke
is a coping mechanism for them.
So that means there are deep underlying issues that the person is seeing but has not admitted that they need to deal with. I spoke at a mental health gathering on the 1st of May on the island, and I was shocked. And I was on a panel for about 25 minutes, and I was shocked after the panel how many people reached out to me saying they needed therapy. Because another misconception also that we didn't mention is people feel that therapy is expensive, but therapy is cheaper than you dying,
right? Because
once you are dead, it's gone, and then you're going to cause a lot of people a lot of pain, the emotional turmoil. But you can pay for that, pay to be better, pay professionals to. I'm not saying me, even though, trust me, I'll give you a good fee, but I'm saying people need to learn to pay. And then the question about Nigerian being on that list is everything around us, our social economy
is a trigger.
Our upbringing. If you travel to Ghana just next door, or even go to Cotonou next door, or Benin Republic, live there for 3 days, see the lifestyle. come back home. Like some of my friends, he says the moment you cross Nigerian border and you drive, say the air you breathe in naturally just changes. And I'm telling you that, and I'm telling someone who oftentimes will fly. Every time I'm flying back into the Nigerian airspace, I fly over another country, you see light. The moment we enter Nigerian airspace, you just see patches of light at one corner, plenty darkness.
Please don't throw shade at us.
Yes, Atuti walk by that. And I'm saying that the
environmental
factor are a lot. So that means, as painful as it sounds, everybody needs a form of functional coping mechanism that works. For example, I have a thing. If I'm driving Lagos traffic, my iLife playlist is a must. If there is no iLife playlist, I will not drive. I have somebody else drive me. Why? Because it calms me down. Otherwise, I get into road.
And there's road rage, yes.
And I'm speaking Oyinbo, and you know, when you're wearing glasses, like you know, so you definitely don't want to put yourself in. So then people also dying because the biggest issue I also have is that we can't disregard the impact of social media and social media impact.
Right, comparison and all that.
Everybody's trying to be, there's a wannabe effect, you know, there's a spotlight factor. You want to be like the next person, you want to lose weight, you want to be this, you want to be that. So people are getting more and more dissatisfied with their life. I'm not saying these things were not happening, but now they are amplified
on social media, Instagram and what have you.
So everybody, you know, you see some TikTok challenges and you're like, this is madness now. This is literal
I'm not going to lie. There was a TikTok challenge one time, you know, where people were showing the outfits that they had, and then there was this girl. She had 152 outfits, and then I was looking at my wardrobe. I had like 7 black shorts. So I mean, obviously that's not enough to depress me, because but for a person who's already vulnerable, and then you're like, I only have 7 polo, and somebody is here on TikTok with 152 outfits, and then you're just sad for no reason.
Good. And then the painful so the painful thing about the effects of social media is this: people see these celebrities from a distance. I know that celebrities that for example, we saw an RMD's picture coming in. They know RMD's net worth, they know his family, they know his wife, they know his car, they know where holidays. When he talks, I say RMD is my guy. You've never met him. So you create that position where you throw and you create relationship with these people, then you begin to live your life off them subconsciously.
Right.
So people need to learn to detox, even though it's hard, as in shut down yourself from social media, and understand that most of the time, most of these people are just doing these things for camera. And the earlier you know, the less prayer you put on yourself.
Right. Well, this is still a mental health awareness, a conversation on mental health awareness. We're talking about mental illnesses. We're talking about some of the triggers, cultural, religious, comparison, social media. We're talking about even the economic factors in Nigeria. These are country-specific issues. You know, being on the road rage, and what have you, and then you realize that you're just aggressive, you're angry. It's not because you're upset with the people around you. You're just upset that you have spent 5 hours in traffic and somebody breathes wrong around you, and you feel a desire to just want to lash out. It's not because this person is responsible. These are mental health, you know, issues that we need to look at. We need to pay attention. We've spoken even to the point where you might need to trace your family history and see that as a human being, we're born out of a string of events, and because of the denial that is rooted in us as people, we would not admit that we're actually going through this condition. So don't forget that depression is the most common form of mental illness, at least in this part of the world, but there are many others. There's ADHD, there's anxiety, you know, you're just anxious. There's a list of other mental health illnesses. So if you're somebody who's probably, you know, experiencing certain signs and symptoms, maybe in the way you relate with people, the fact that you can't control your emotions, you see yourself unnecessarily sad, and you want to ask questions, you need clarity, you can drop your comments on our social media platforms, Mainland 98.3 FM, or you can call into the studio 0913 6000 410. I know that you already touched on culture and tradition before, but I still want us to talk about that, though we don't have a lot of time, but still, let's just manage the time that we have. Let's talk about culture and tradition, and let's also talk about the discriminatory attitude of people. Like I said, especially for men, and I know why I said especially for men. As a man, say you break down and you're crying, and everybody's looking at you that, I mean, why would a man be crying? And then you say something like, oh, I'm going to therapy, and everybody's looking at you like, I want to say a word that's not allowed on radio, but why are you being, you know, a weakling? Let's use weakling as a better synonym. So let's talk about how culture, tradition, religion, and also the discriminatory attitude of society towards a mental health issue, how these continue to be major contributors to, you know, the should I say, the madness that has ensued us in this part of the world.
So I had a conversation last year with somebody who sold insurance, and he made this statement. He said the biggest problem with the insurance industry in Nigeria is Jesus Christ.
Well, let's just say religion, so that, you know, let's just say religion.
Okay. So
or religion dogma.
Okay. So because we're on air.
Yes, let's just say religion.
So the biggest problem, of course, also with mental health, it's the same religious dogma. As I can't speak more to the Islamic faith, but I can speak more to the Christian faith, and I'll speak more because people. Okay, so I have a friend who had this issue. He's a pastor, right? Goes to church every Sunday to do sermon, and he says he has the phobia of waking up every Sunday morning because his wife and himself will always fight.
Why?
How am I supposed to ask God's causing that problem?
Yeah.
So that means, of course, the reality is that there's something that the woman is dissatisfied about, that she can't give expression to, and the only way she feels she can give expression to it is to start a fight. And that man is supposed to go to service the morning and preach, because one of the biggest products that religion serves to people is hope, is the product of hope. So how do you give hope to people where you are taking a dose in the morning? You now show up in the morning and say, praise the Lord,
let love lead.
So that by itself is contradiction. Then there are also the issues where people definitely, you know, around you, that whatever it is they are dealing with, of course we know life is spiritual, but it's more that there's a place of a spiritual help, and there's a place of a mental need or mental intervention, as the case may be. And I privileged to be at a minister's conference, and I was asked to speak, and I spoke for over an hour, and the only thing I spoke about was mental health. By the time this conference was over, all the ministers were around me, and this and that, because people just got to realize that if your mind is not right, if your mind is not correct, you can't function well. Then if you now go to tradition, the biggest concept with tradition is the fact that people don't want things to change.
Right.
People cannot accept change. Because the Babalola that has used the same agbo to treat a 40, what's that? All these sort of things, and they will say that one thing can cure everything, and then you now tell them that your one that's curing everything is not curing this one.
Right.
And then don't forget that if you follow African history, I also have been an history student. We've had history of mad kings, people who were not sane, and then you would see how history has probably cropped them out of history, and they are not even in the conversation at all. So culture will also now tell you that we can't accept, or we can't come to terms that we are the family that is having a strings of depression. No. Right. If you can't, no, go to the farm, make a ridge, plant something, the thing will go away. But the truth is that there are certain times in people's life, as you grow older, you become more and more introspective. You look more within than you look out. So let's not lie. Okay, God. I had a conversation with someone 2 days ago who went to the same secondary school with me. He graduated 2006. I graduated, don't look at me like I'm not that old. I graduated I left school 1996.
Okay.
So I'm in a WhatsApp group for my secondary school. Of course, you know how WhatsApp groups can be like. And you literally say, let us gather, let's have a meeting, and there are certain people that will not show up because they believe that there is a concept of the haves and the haves not. Before I joined the executive, I never saw it as an issue. But when I got there, I would hear certain things that would make my stomach just churn. Like, what in God's name is this? don't forget that while we were in secondary school, I didn't know you were going to be rich. You didn't know I was going to be a public speaker. I didn't know you were going to own an oil and gas firm. You were just kids, and I think that growing up was enough. But for some people, it is not enough. That is one of the things that culture will do to you. So that then another thing that I think we also need to address that I also don't accept is we are becoming less and less a society that is accepting of where we are and what we have. Everybody at a certain stage in life will be at a certain stage, and if that's the stage where you are, that's the stage where you are.
Acceptance is important.
Contentment.
While striving for more, but at least contentment.
Be content in what you have.
Right.
If what you have is those 6 polo that you mentioned, wear it well, wash, keep it clean, well perfumed, dry it often, show up. In fact, be known as a six polo guy. Own it. Right? Someone was saying something about this popular influencer, Ola of Lagos. I know it didn't start out like that, but look at where the young man has brought himself to today. Even though I'm not a big fan of influencers, but I think that people should not deny where they are. Own where you are, admit, then say from here we can begin to push the conversation to where
right. We're going to need to end this conversation really, really soon so I don't get penalized. But then again, let's talk about the fact that we don't even have enough, medical care for people who are going through this condition. The health sector is suffering, and then we can see the drift. A lot of, health practitioners are leaving the country. We already have a deficit of mental health doctors, of, psychiatrists. We already have a deficit. Yes. So how is this like another problem that even though we have the situation underreported, there's still that even for those who report it, we don't even have enough doctors to attend to them. Let's round off with that conversation.
The truth is that everybody wants better. What I do, I know what my colleagues and contemporary will earn in other countries, say other climes like Canada, America, and the likes. But some of us are still patriots. Okay, onto visa. But truth is, I'm a patriot, and I believe that there is room for us to do more. Then the other thing you can also do, if you can't get better. I know there are quite a number. For example, I know that an association I belong to currently, they're doing some intervention that is almost near free, and you can take advantage of it. And that is always a great place to start. There is help if you look. If you don't look, you will not find. But if you look, you will always find.
Right. Well, there's still so much to talk about, but don't worry, we can continue this on social media. So follow us on our social media platforms, and if you would like to talk to Kolade Stephen, just send us a message and we'll give you his information. Thank you so much for being here. He's a certified life coach, behavioral expert, management consultant, and therapist. We spoke about mental health awareness in Nigeria. We've spoken about the triggers and also why it is important for you to get help. My name is Sage Babalola. That's it for Help Plus today. Until next week, Friday, from 10:15 a.m. to 11 a.m., we'll be back with another interesting conversation. Don't go anywhere. It's the station that is definitely the sound of Lagos, Mainland 98.3 FM. Don't go anywhere.